How's it going, YouTube? All my viewers, hopefully people that have been anticipating me doing this deck list and sort of like mini discussion. What I have built is probably the most unique deck I've built, to say the least. I can't really describe it in a way other than I'm just going to lay it out for you. And it's a Fiendsmith Despia deck. Actually plays really well. Just hear me out on this one. We got 3 Engraver. We have 1 lacrima. 2 of these cards are honorary Fiendsmith cards, not official. We got Fabled Lurrie, because Fabled Lurrie. And we have Santa Claus. Santa Claus, you might not have expected that, but he is in fact a light fiend. He is searchable off tract. And he is an searchable kaiju. So that alone is pretty freaking good, if you ask me. Speaking of which, we have the tracks right here. Playing 2 and 1. I think 3, 2, 1 is not the most optimal ratios. I think 3, 3, 1 would probably be better. But we're still kind of in the experimenting stages. We'll just take these guys and set them all to the side there. While I'm going through, I'm probably going to be picking out cards to talk about. In the branded side of things, unleashing the dark branded, we have 3 guiding quem, 2 of blazing cartesia. We have 1 albion, 1 albaz, a aluber, and a dramaturge. That is the monster line. The theory with it is the only actual fusion for the albaz stuff is probably going to be either branded in red or cartesia. We are not playing any fusion lock cards in this deck. I should be playing branded opening in this build. It should be in here for its graveyard effect. But I made a goof. I made a mistake. And in terms of how this deck performed today, we kind of went like, pretty sure it was 2-2. Might have been 3 or 1-3. But most of that isn't due to the deck itself. I'd say it's due to the actual like micro errors that always happen when you play Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes you gotta be really on your schnit. And when you're not on your schnit, you're not on your schnit. We have the best card for this deck, 3 of branded in high spirits. That card is really, that's the bread and butter in this deck. We have branded in red, 1 of retribution, just because it's really, really good. And we are playing all 3 of the Major League Bystial continuous spells and traps. I'm doing a bit of a Bystial control thing here too. And my other thing about it is I kind of want to go through a full established Bystial setup and set regained before I would continue too hard into the Fiendsmith lineup, because when your Fiendsmith guys, when they get banished, that's kind of the end of your Fiendsmith guys. Up until this new fusion came out, but still, you got to get into them, and you don't always have the light fiend access in the graveyard or on the field. It's not always 100% realistic. And sometimes you'll end up making the guy to get back the other guy, but then the first guy getting back the second guy isn't really as strong as he should be. So there's a lot of like micro compromises you need to make in Yu-Gi-Oh just in general. And it really doesn't help when you make little boo-boos. It also doesn't help sometimes that this deck just dies to Dimension Shifter. I repeat, just it gets destroyed by Shifter. Not like my other branded builds I've done before. They kind of laugh at Shifter. This card, I will talk about it later. It's really good. Why am I not playing Branded Fusion, you are wondering? I was thinking about it. I was going to do Branded Fusion with Duplication, Set Off Thrust, but my brain went to a different route with Thrust. So we'll just go for the Bystials, because I just talked about, or I just showed you the continuous spells and traps. Show you the Bystials here. Got 2 Soranirs. I've got a magnamhut. I've got 3 of our boy lubellion, because he gets the ball rolling. And I've got 2 of druiswurm, just because he's the schnitt. I made a bit of a boo-boo today, as we'll talk about when I get into the extra deck with the Bystials here. Made a bit of a boo-boo. Like, do not get excited when you play, if you ever decide to play this deck. You gotta kind of like take your steps properly. Something that helps with that though is that we are playing the Azamina package. You got 3 wanted, 1 diabellstar, and the 2 cards for the Azamina fusion. Pretty standard, like there's nothing really special to report about that. It's just Azamina being Azamina. People talk about how Fiendsmith is like such a splashable engine and it pisses people off, but this whole thing wouldn't be possible without this specific card. And if this gets banned, if that gets banned, this whole deck just gets taken apart. I will promise you that. Like, Konami, if you're watching this and you do not want this deck being played at all, just ban High Spirits. It's more important for me than for an actual, like, full branded build. But, anyways, yeah, Azamina was something that you could just splash any amount of sinful spoils nonsense into your deck, and you'll just get it for free. And, you know, if you're not seeing, like, Fiendsmith Ryziel, and if you're not seeing Malice because they lock you into certain shit in certain ways, or because they don't really have the deck space for the consistency, literally any other deck is probably on an Azamina package. So we'll just keep it a $150. Fiendsmith is not the problem with being the most splashable engine in fucking Yu-Gi-Oh right now. We've got the Thrust package in here. Speaking of another splashable package, we've got the 3 Thrusts, the 1 Talents, and the Infinite Impermanence. In a going first situation, always set this. In a going second situation, I usually search this, but it comes down to if you have any other starters in your hand, because Fiendsmith Tract is also a legal target to search off that. But I've got way zestier searches for it in the extra deck. Then I just got 2 little basic Ghost Girl hand traps at 2, Ogre and Ash. I've always believed in Ogre. She's kind of my favorite. Ash is just too good to say no to. Kind of crumples a lot of people all the time still. So it's also kind of like poetic tragedy when I'm going against like a pure branded build. And then I just dropped the ash on them on the branded fusion. They're like, oh no. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Anyways, getting into the extra deck here, we got Moon, because she is the third Fiendsmith card that is not a Fiendsmith card. We have the actual Fiendsmith cards again with Fiendsmiths Requiem. This guy is just, he's very good. A lot of different situations. Because he's a quick effect, you can do him on the opponent's turn. Makes a lot of different recycling happen in a lot of weird ways. Let's get these guys a little bit more center mass. We have Fiendsmith Sequence. Another just amazing card. You can chain one this, and chain two Cartesia if you don't have enough light fiends in your graveyard to spin this back. Not that you'd really want to, because like he's kind of the one that makes your Desiree as cracked as he is. But we got Agnamonde anyways, because that's just too good of a line to ignore. That makes the survivability of this deck go from like 50 to 100. Like it doubles your revival. And Desiree right there. Desiree, he's the boy. He's just so powerful. You got to make him as often as possible. Like, you get him equipped with Agnamonde and anything in the sequence. It's just, people look at that and it's like big dink energy. Big dink energy all around. You might be wondering where and when am I actually going to get into the branded side of the extra deck if this is a branded build. I've got Albion. I've got a Dracostapelia in a limited game state off of Albaz and Albion himself. And I've got the other Albion. That's it. That's all we really want, and that's all we really need. I wouldn't really even be playing this Albion. I'd be playing something else. But he can't be targeted. And he's 3,000, and he does graveyard interruption shit. And the amount of times that comes up in so many games still, like when you don't use Sanctifier for lock purposes, and you actually utilize the motherfucker, he's so powerful. And he can't be like super polyed away, so you get Albion and Desiree, your board's like super polyproof. You're fine. You're just sitting there chilling. You're laughing. So we got a few more cards to go into, as you can see, for our extra deck. We got Grand Guignol, because it's just, it ends up just being a free body for link summons while sending follow-up. But Grand Guignol is still super good. Like, at one, I made some mistakes during my duels today, because I went from playing a deck that had 2 Grand Guignols to playing this deck. And I made a lot of misplays around that. So just keep that in mind if you're, like, just know the lines a little bit intimately. And know your resource management a little bit intimately. We'll go into our last 2 really spicy inclusions here. I've got Despian Proskenian, or Despian Queritus, and Despian Proskenian. So Queritus, he's like the last case scenario monster. Like, if all else fails and he's on the board, you probably fucked up somewhere, and he's the last thing keeping you in the game. I will straight up say that is what Queritus on the field is. But I'm not quite ready to reveal all of the super secret goo just yet. We'll go into our remaining 4 slots. We have SP because we can. We have Lulewalilith because if you've already gone through your Queritus and you don't want to go into Proskenian, then Grangwignal will go into Lulewalilith, and that'll just get you a little bit more follow-up, or a little bit more layers of interruption. Next up we have Dispater. And the thing I was saying about, like, you gotta kind of sequence your shit properly playing this deck, I made a goof today. I attributed over the Bystial magnamhut with lubellion in the graveyard, rather than using these two to synchro into that first, and then tribute over this after using its effect to get something back off the banish. That's the big goof I made, and that cost me a game. So just always be mindful that you're not playing branded Despia. You're playing Fiendsmith Despia. But we'll keep on going into it. The final card is obviously Azamina Ilia Silvera, if you've been paying attention, as I hope you should be. So that's kind of it. Proskenian, I'll talk about him for a minute. He is when you know you can just wreck shit right away. You don't want the game to go very long, because you can, if you have Despians in your graveyard and a dark monster like one of your Bystials, rather than go into Desiree, you can go into Proskenian off of sequence. And then you can do everything that you would have done with Desiree, just with Proskenian instead. From the link summon and then put it back type shit, you can do all of that. Like, it's all there. You can do all of the same shit with this guy, except for make him off of the spell in the graveyard. You cannot do that. But he can do it because he just makes a light fiend fusion monster. Doesn't specifically need to be a Fiendsmith monster. So that's where these guys come in. They come in a pinch. This guy, you get all 3 of these onto him, or wherever they are. You get all 3 of those onto him. He's massive. And whenever he beats over something, he'll pierce it, and he'll burn him for it. Like, think about that. That's pretty good if you ask me. I quite enjoy that. That has won me some games. On to the side deck. I got 2 nibs. Got 2 spookies. I got 2 mulch armies of the Perulia, 2 of the Fuwalos, 2 of the Drolls. I've got 3 of the Forbidden Droplets. And I've got a Dimension Barrier. And I've got a Masquerade. So why am I playing most of my hand traps at 2? I just believe in running hand traps at 2. That's kind of just the way I play the game. If you want to play him at 3, that's completely on you. I have no means to actually, like, stop you from doing that. And it'd probably end up being better for you. I just have had a lot of situations, and I've played a lot of lower engine decks where the issue becomes you literally have your 1 card starter and then everything else is just fucking hand traps and bullshit. So, like, hand traps and bullshit don't really help when your opponent plays around them. You might as well just have a strong engine to back up, or you might as well have these things to back up a strong engine rather than they themselves being like a core part of the deck, if you know what I mean. Like, if including three different hand traps stops you from getting into engine, especially when you're playing a deck like this, it's not worth it. I view, say, both of these Mulch Armies as just 4 copies of Mulch Army cards. I know they don't act the same in the current format as far as I'm concerned. I'm still going to be drawing 2 cards off of 1 card. And I'm not going to have to spin it back. That's kind of been my whole thing with it. I don't want to draw too deep into them because I don't want that end phase effect to stack. But we'll just fucking keep going. Nibiru and Droll, like, seeing them two is kind of a turn skip. Spooky for time with Droll, like, those two are basically a turn skip, like in round 3, or those two are a turn skip. Droplet for just going through the board when you're going into a known going second, or into a set a card and pass situation, you know Droplet's always going to come up. So that's why that's at 3. Because it's just more proactive. It's not necessarily waiting for your opponent to do anything other than just formulate some type of play. Just create a monster for me to negate with Droplet. Those other cards, they're waiting for your opponent to do very specific things. Droplet's kind of just, you either have it and you set it and wait, or you have it when you start your turn and you break through the board. But yeah, let's get into that one line of goo that I was telling you about. And I'm sure that if you've been paying attention, you probably noticed a lot of other little lines of synergy that I've cooked up. But one of the coolest things that kind of made me really consider this deck as a possibility at first and not just some pipe dream is the card Branded in High Spirits. This card, I will show you a card in my hand. We'll say it's Fabled Lurrie, because that is probably the best example. Then, because of the effect of Branded in High Spirits, we will send Despia and Queritus from the extra deck and discard the Lurrie. Discard. It specifically says to search us a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz, which will be Quem. Then, new chain, we'll get the Lurrie to special back. We will then not do the link summon. Normal summon. Be patient, Padawan. She will send Cartesia to the graveyard. And then you do your link summon, Padawan. Because then, and only then, do you trigger Quem to get back your Cartesia. And there you have begun something that resembles a board. From there, I will let your imagination take it. As well, you can spin this guy back as a light fiend when you eventually go into your fusion plays. Let's say, hypothetically, you pop that, get a Fiendsmith on the board, go these two as a link to into the fucking sequence. There's your fusion materials already. That's just like very low to the ground because I'm kind of running out of time. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you seen the lines like I did. And if anything, I hope you I hope you enjoyed an interesting and unique build. Until next time, have fun.